Things they didn't tell you at diagnosis, part 3. I've been giving a lot of thought to this because I don't want to just pad it out for no reason at all. What I want to do is give you some useful tips and info and some insight. Shift.ms, friends of mine at Shift.ms have finally launched their app, which is pretty cool. I'll put it in the description below. And so I just find it a lot easier to use with the app. Anyhow, I was just reading Shift, and there's a lot of newly diagnosed people come on there, amongst other places, but it really highlights to me, and I'm 33 years into this, just how much has and hasn't changed. Partly, I think, is it's very hard for your medical professionals sometimes to deal with talking to you about it, but other times I just don't think people get it. Or more importantly, as I was saying to a colleague of mine, a professor of neuroscience, I think sometimes they're scared of it. It's easier not to deal with something than it is to face into it, or to say to a patient, look, this isn't great news. It's much easier for a doctor to be the good news person. I said the good news guy. I mean this in a North American sense, male or female. So doctors and nurses like to be the good news guys, because who likes giving somebody bad news? But it is not the best news, is it? Let's face it. We've just been told that we have a chronic, lifelong, incurable, progressively disabling disease. There's no other way to cut it. Some of us do better. I've had it for 33 years, and arguably I've done better than many I know, but others do very poorly. And you don't know at the very beginning. And this is what I want to talk about, is you just don't know. And that feeling, I always describe it as like somebody's got a gun to my head. They've cocked it. We're now going over a bumpy road, and I'm thinking, when's this damn thing going to go off? And really, really, really screw me up. And you get used to it, I suppose, to a certain extent after this amount of time. If you're newly diagnosed, you're not going to be used to it, and you shouldn't be used to it, and you shouldn't feel bad for being in sort of fear, shall we say, of the disease. I mean, you've got to manage it. There's no two ways about it, because otherwise, frankly, I think you'll go nuts. It's just, you will be scared, and you will think about it a lot. And I always joke and say I used to think about it every 3 seconds, but now I can go up to 15 minutes before it crosses my mind. But it's like this sort of Damocles. It's just hanging above you. At what point is it going to get you? And that's something that you've just got to learn to deal with, however you do it. I'm not going to dispense psychological advice here, but what I would say is there's tons out there, and there's more and more online these days. And I see people asking questions where I think sometimes quick Google would have answered that. But on the other side, I think it's important for people to feel that they're asking questions of an MS community. So I completely get that. Here's another thing. Your experiences of the drug are not going to be the same as somebody else's. By all means, ask somebody else how they're getting on with the drug, but don't immediately transfer that to you. I see so much of I'm starting on, I don't know, Kesimpta, ofatumumab. Has anybody else got experience of it? Well, there's the technical stuff like injecting yourself once a month. I used to inject myself daily with Copaxone back in the day. And yeah, it's something you get used to. I sat there with the auto-injector. Actually, I got Rebif first. I sat there with the auto-injector the first time, hovering over my fat stomach roll for about 30 minutes, thinking, come on, Dom, it's just a tiny needle. Don't be so wussy. Press the button. I got to the stage where I was taking the needles themselves and just doing it without the auto-injector because it was easier just to go, boff, like that. But that was back in the day. That brings me on to the drugs. If you're in the UK, I don't know about other countries. I know in the US, they're very keen on prescribing high efficacy meds, but I don't really understand all the payment systems there. So I'm sorry, I'm useless for advice on that. But in the UK, if you are diagnosed with relapsing-remitting MS out of the gates, you may have ocrelizumab, which is Ocrevus, ofatumumab, which is Kesimpta, or I think they've just changed it so you can get Mavenclad, which is cladribine as well. There's a video all about Mavenclad, which I will try and link to. Oh, look at that. I'm so terrible at this. I'm going to try and link to in the top here about now so that you can see a world expert talking about Mavenclad. That's an IRT, an immunoreconstitutive therapy. The other two are high efficacy, very high efficacy DMTs, and they're B-cell depleters. I've been on ocrelizumab in the past. I've now taken Lemtrada because I want to, as much as possible, put it all behind me. I don't like the idea of being tied to a hospital for 6-monthly infusions or tied to a drug that I can only get if I'm in the UK sitting here every month waiting for it. It is that sort of feeling of all of a sudden your life has gone from you do what you want type thing to you have so many different hospital appointments. You're getting your bloods taken, you're going in for your infusion, you've got your annual MRI, you've got your annual nurse appointment, whatever. It all varies, but if you are unfamiliar with what a hospital looks like, you won't be for long because you'll be in and out of a hospital so much to a greater or lesser extent for the rest of your life. So that's another thing, is be prepared. Always go early because they never have big enough car parks and they're always overflowing. Take some money, or no, be prepared to pay. In these modern days, you can pay by contactless, but you will be punished with MS. You will not get free prescriptions like people with diabetes do, for example, or birth control, contraceptives. MS is still in this sort of dark area where you have to pay for your prescriptions. So if you're getting something on prescription, consider buying a prescription certificate. And in the description below, I'll link to the UK government place where you can buy a prescription certificate. But do the maths, or math, depends where you are. It may not be worth it. I don't think it's worth it if you get 2 items. But it may well be worth it if you get 3 items or more. Also, with chronic meds, my GP took a bit of arm twisting, but I've convinced him to prescribe me my vitamin D and my modafinil on a 3-monthly rolling basis. My old GP did it on 4. But essentially, I pay 1 prescription fee for 3 months. If your GP won't, or is being awkward or whatever, and wants to just put it on monthly, especially dispensing GPs, if you dispense from a GP, trust me, it pays them to have you get it monthly. But if your GP won't and they put it on monthly, it may well be worth buying a certificate. And I think you can buy one for up to a year, and that's well worth it. So your drugs will cost you, other than your DMT, which you get in hospital. I think my final thing I'm going to round up with is, gosh, the standards of care are so different in the UK. They shouldn't be. And somebody asked me yesterday, what would I want for MS people? Because I asked them what they wanted. And they told me, and asked me what I wanted. And I just think it would be pretty normal and decent to have a quality of care. And when I say that, I saw a post from a guy who's 30 years old. To me, I'm 55, that's quite young, who had just been offered a choice. That's bizarre in itself, offering somebody a choice of drugs. You wouldn't get an orthopedic surgeon saying, now I could operate in several different ways. Before I put you under, I want to know which way you want. It just doesn't happen. Or if you rocked up with a cancer diagnosis, which is sort of all the fire alarms, all hands to the pump. You don't really have long discussions about which cancer drugs to use. And MS is pretty serious because it's lifelong. It just doesn't have that immediate feeling that you're going to die. People say, oh, well, you're not going to die. Well, yeah, I'd rather not be disabled either. But you're getting these people who are being offered these incredibly low efficacy drugs. So they're being offered it. Number one, why would a non-expert be asked to choose their drugs? I find that really, really weird. And I would push back and say, look, you're the professionals, you're the experts. You are paid to be consultants. And I frankly expect you to guide me on my drug choice. And I expect you to ask me what I want to achieve in my life, not just go, oh, here you go. Come back and let me know which one you want. And this poor young man, why would he know otherwise, was offered 4 of the crappiest drugs going in the UK. When you can prescribe Kesimpta, Ocrevus, or Cladribine, Mavenclad, but they weren't even given that option. They were given 2 injectables, which I started on 20 years ago. It's just beggars belief. All the evidence is the sooner that you intervene with a high efficacy medication, the better the patient's long-term outcomes are. I mean, why wouldn't you? There's no skin off their nose. There's no cost implications. In many ways, when you look at it long-term, the patient costs the state less because they are less disabled for a longer time. But I just don't get it. How you could do that to somebody. Because it's not putting yourself in their shoes. It's not understanding what they want to do. But be prepared that you may do that. And you're perfectly entitled to seek a second opinion. There's a video on this channel with Wendy Jobbins-Harris, who works in the NHS, who talks about how to ask for a second opinion because she did. I have as well, by the way. I've changed hospitals and doctors. But it's perfectly feasible to do that. You've got to be prepared to do the legwork. But given that it's, to me, generally only every year, then it's worth it. So anyway, guys, that's a really good news one. I know that you're loving it. But being scared is normal. Don't be scared forever. You can't be scared forever. You know, I guess I'm evidence of that. You just cannot be scared forever. But I've got a patron because look at me trying to get my finger up there. I run this channel all on my own. I don't get, say, pharma company support to run the channel or anything like that. So anything you can do to subscribe, like, ring bells. Patreon is less than a cup of coffee a month if you want to help sort me out and help me to run the channel and the running costs, you know, equipment, electricity, computing, time, all that kind of stuff, because I don't charge for any of this to anybody who watches it. So your help is greatly appreciated. So also ask me anything you like in the comments. I am pretty darn good at responding to comments. I know the channel's getting successful with 4,000 plus subscribers because I'm getting trolled. That's the word. Getting trolled by lunatics who have obviously just come across it and feel they've got to make some sort of either nasty or totally irrelevant comment. But that's good too. That tells me that people have seen the videos. Like I said, any questions, just ask me in the comments. All right. Take care. Have a good one. Bye.